weeks in Sunday school, we've been working through Genesis. We started out with creation, the fall. Last couple of weeks we've been talking about Abraham and what he's done for his service for God. When God came and asked him, said, "Hey, Abraham, you need to go. Now, move 300 miles away from your family." You know, today, 300 miles isn't that big of a deal. You know, it's a 4-hour drive. But for them, that was a 3-month journey by foot. And he moved him, his entire family, all of his livestock, his servants, took Lot with him, his nephew. And then when him and Lot split up, he continued to pray for Lot. This morning we talked about Sodom and Gomorrah and how it was more than just a recognition of God's judgment on sin. It was also a recognition of God's judgment of righteousness and who is doing right in his eyes, and how Abraham once again stepped up to the plate of faith and literally smacked a home run. He went up to God and said, "Well, God, you sure you have to destroy the city? What if you find 50 righteous people there?" And God said, "Well, okay." Abraham said, "Well, what about 40? What about 10? He started, he gradually came in, got it down to 10. He said, "Yeah, all right, fine. 10 people. If I can find 10 righteous people there, I won't destroy it." And God, through the intercession of one man, God had a change of heart. And it's the one thing we can take away from this is that God always has our back. I titled this message, "Got Your Six." If you watched NBC or the NBC networks, they had that big commercial on about having the backs of our soldiers. Well, it's the same principle that I'm working on here, is we have to have each other's backs. God's got our back, but we also have to have each other's backs. Regardless of what you may think about God and his judgment, one thing we can always count on is if we stay with him, we're obedient to him, and we stay in a good, standing, intimate relationship with him, he will always have our backs. He will always be standing there at the ready to protect us from behind and not let the enemy sneak up behind us. And in 1 Kings, Solomon dedicated the temple. 1 Kings 8, verses 44 through 50. Solomon came and he dedicated the temple. In verse 46, he reminds us of what Paul told us in Romans, that everybody has sinned. All have sinned and fallen short of the grace of God. No matter how righteous you think you are, every man or woman sins throughout their lifetime. And we can count on the fact that God will have our back if we come to him, if we ask for his forgiveness. But we have to do what Solomon states in verses 47 and 48. And that is, that they turn to you in repentance and pray. "We have sinned, done evil, and acted wickedly. And if they turn to you with their whole heart and soul in the land of their enemies, and pray towards the land you gave to their ancestors, toward this city you have chosen, and towards this temple I have built to honor your name." And what Solomon was saying is that if Israel is captured, if God sees it fit that Israel should be taken down a few pegs and taken into captivity, and the people turn towards Jerusalem and pray to God, and pray with an honest-to-goodness changed heart, that God will protect them and bring them back. So clearly, Solomon's putting us at the front line here. He's putting the believers Whether you were Jewish back then or Christians today, we are at the front lines of our own protection and our own standing with God. We have to come to God and look to God and say, God, I need your help. God, I messed up yesterday. Or, God, I'm sorry I cursed at that person out of anger. I don't know what came over me. I just did it. And I know I shouldn't have. God, I'm upset by this. And we have to have that truly changed heart. But we also have to remember that even in our request for forgiveness, God has a plan. And that plan includes judgment. And you will be judged whether you're good or whether you're wicked. You will stand before the throne of judgment. And there are times when we will stand before it daily, but ultimately we will have to stand before it in the end. And will determine our eternal fate. And that judgment will result in two things. It will either result in punishment or it will result in mercy. And the choice is yours. The choice is mine. Which side of that bench do I want to stand on in the end? Do I want to stand over here on the punishment side with the goats? Or do I want to stand over here on the mercy side with the sheep?